So here we are, the third and final main installment of the Danganronpa franchise. I love all three of the main Danganronpa games for different reasons, and V3 in many ways is an improvement on its predecessors. But it's not all great. I plan to do videos on only 2 cases of this game, but I may decide to add more if a case sticks out on the current playthrough. But for now, let's talk about what I think is one of the best cases in V3. The first one. I would say, with little to no hesitation, that V3 has the best first case in Danganronpa. It caused quite the split in opinion within the fandom, like V3 as a whole, but I'll address the main critiques that I've encountered a bit later on. I think this case has it all, an interesting and engaging plot that stands alone, as well as being crucial to the overall story, great character development and really impactful emotional beats, twists, turns, and replayability. So, let's get started. V3 is a much longer game than the first 2, and, I'd expect it to be, considering it was much more expensive. And this added game time can be advantageous in certain situations, but unfortunately it does lead to some major pacing issues. This leads me to clear up that when I say that V3 has the best first chapter, I am not including the prologue. I found the prologue to be really dragged out and started off the game displaying some of the pacing problems that will come into play later on. A main problem with the prologue is that it throws a shit ton of information at the player that will only come into play in the final chapter. The other 2 games spread hints to the finale throughout the game, but all the hints that we get during V3's main story are fake hints from those useless fucking flashback lights. They overcomplicate things for no good reason. All the funeral shots and meteors and diseases and space programs and all that bullshit is just made up. And because they were to scatter only these hints during the story, all the actually useful real hints are thrown at us all at once at the start of the game. It's not too bad on a replay or with knowledge of the ending, but on a first playthrough, it just ends up being a confused mess and takes away from what the prologue should be, an introduction to the characters and situation. But putting the prologue aside, I feel that Chapter 1 picks up on the faults of the prologue, giving us more chance to get to know the characters in more organic ways, and giving us a fast-moving plot with literally no filler. Every scene in this chapter, minus the breaks for the free times, is important and adds to the narrative of the chapter. We start off exactly where the prologue leaves us, in the gym, where Kaede gives her first motivational speech. She successfully rallies everyone together, proving that she is a good leader, and then we immediately get to work looking for a way out. Thanks to Gonta, we actually find the exit, and then we get the hardest fucking minigame I've ever played. It plays like one of those rage games, and I absolutely loved this switch up in gameplay. And then we get the first knock to Kaede's confidence. She fails to take into account people's emotions, and tries to make them all keep pushing and getting hurt. Then Kokichi shows his ability to manipulate and strike at the core by turning the group against Kaede concerningly quickly. Again, establishing characters organically. So Kaede is feeling really fucking low, but then after sleeping on it, everyone seems fine with Kaede, and things are even better when Monokuma gets fucking dead. So we get that momentary easing of tension, and this is a real strength of the plot and pacing of this chapter. While everything that happens is important, we get moments of both high and low tension. We get these small gaps to breathe, and just like Nagito's mentality, we get bad events followed by good events, and vice versa. After this, we get a demonstration of Shuichi's detective skills and the game's first mention of the mastermind. I love how they brought up this idea so early in the game. It really surprised me on the first playthrough. I was like, holy shit, these characters are taking action this quickly? Brilliant! We know how much I love active characters. Then Monokuma is back and he gives us the additional motive of the time limit. This is another huge blow to the morale of the cast, and in particular, Kaede. All of a sudden, morals get twisted, as it becomes less clear what is the best line of action. It seems that Monokuma is specifically targeting Kaede, as Rantaro points out. She wants everyone to work together and trust each other, so Monokuma keeps making it more and more attractive to betray each other. Then Shuichi and Kaede go back to the library and come to the conclusion that the mastermind is one of them, again adding to the list of reasons why it's beneficial to not trust people. And then we come up with our plan to take pitch to the mastermind and go about putting our plan in motion. On the final morning before the time limit, a fight breaks out between Ryoma and Rantaro when Ryoma says, "We have no plan. It's likely we're all gonna die. One of you kill me so you can all live." Honestly, I really liked this scene. I found Ryoma's plan, while incredibly morbid and heartbreaking, to make perfect sense in terms of how desperate everyone was becoming, and how serious this new motive was. It reminded me of Chapter 4 in Danganronpa 2, and, well, I made a video on that case too, so yeah, these life-threatening motives really do it for me. Rantaro says some more mysterious shit, and then makes this genuinely unnerving expression while telling us to not interfere or do anything unnecessary. This I also love. The rest of the day is spent setting up our plan with Shuichi, and then we get this genuinely lovely scene between Shuichi and Kaede, where Shuichi talks about why he's the ultimate detective, and why he has problems with self-confidence and fears uncovering the truth. And then Kaede comforts him and encourages him. This lovely moment of calm and emotion is followed by the irritating and unnerving song, and then the panic of the murder. Like, is this not just a perfect progression of events? This chapter has a complete standalone arc, with moments of light and shade, gradual heightening of tension. I think this is the only chapter of V3 that gets the pacing right for me. It just feels so carefully crafted. Okay, now I've gone over the basic plot, let's get into something this chapter does so well. The details. It's the details that make replaying this case so rewarding and fun, because playing this chapter with the ending in mind changes the whole perspective of it. When this game first came out, I bought it pretty much right away and luckily managed to avoid any and all spoilers. And the game got me good. At no point during the first chapter did I ever consider that Kaede would kill. And I only realised what was happening at the point in the trial when Shuichi was under suspicion, and I wondered why he wasn't saying anything. And I realised that I was incredibly lucky that I was able to experience the game as it was intended, and I get that not everyone was able to have this experience due to spoilers everywhere, or them just being smarter than me and figuring out that Kaede was the killer. But the reveal was so fucking effective for me. I lost my shit. And I think I love the reveal that bit more because I've always wondered what it would be like if we were able to play as a killer. I never expected to not know about it though. The reveal? Beautiful. The way it switched to Shuichi? Oh god, say that 10 times fast. Switch to Shuichi. And the confidence he said Kaede is the killer with. Absolutely gorgeous. The moment when they show you when Kaede committed the crime and how you witnessed it all but didn't realise it? Fucking hell. Stunning. And then after all of this, you get the genuinely heartbreaking moment where you have to say goodbye to a character you've been in the head of for hours and have developed strong feelings for. And then there's the most stunningly brutal execution ever. But the best thing about the Kaede reveal is by far the little details the creators left throughout the chapter, and how, if you replay the game, you spend the entire time pointing at random lines of dialogue or inner monologue that seemed normal on a first playthrough, but now very obviously point to Kaede's downfall or murder plan. At this point I'll put a sort of slideshow of lines that stuck out to me on a second playthrough. That is, if I could find them in my hours of gameplay. I just love this so much. It's not like the reveal came out of nowhere. The game shows you exactly how we got to the situation, and this is the best way to do a narrative twist. I can't speak for others, but for me, they got the balance between concealing the twist and leaving hints spot on. Right, that's most of my praise of the plot out of the way. Now let's go into some more detail with something I've already touched on. Kaede is such a good character. He's one of my favourite Danganronpa protagonists, despite only being alive for the first chapter. And now, I'm going to explain why. Kaede, like a select few other Danganronpa characters, has a grounded, interesting, and complete character arc. She starts off very protagonistic, arguably more so than the other protagonists. She's optimistic, determined, charismatic, and a great leader. Kaede very quickly endears herself to both Shuichi and you, the player, and as you go around meeting the rest of the cast, you get a good feel for Kaede's inner monologue. And I love her inner monologue. It's as sarcastic and downright sassy as Hajime's, and as optimistic and positive as Makoto's, with some added self-confidence and funny moments. She's also kinda thirsty, especially towards Tsumugi, which never fails to entertain me. And this is all well and good, But we initially don't get a lot of layers from Kaede, and this has led to some people calling her a bit of a Mary Sue, which is valid at first, but Kaede's character starts getting more and more interesting as the events of this chapter start getting to her. So many things happen in the first chapter that just break Kaede's spirit bit by bit, and in her desperation to keep her promises to the group, she ends up going way too far and killing innocent classmates. I've already mentioned the sequence of events in this chapter, so I won't go through how they affect Kaede in that much more detail, but what I find really interesting is the moment Kaede decides to try and kill the mastermind, which I think is the moment in the warehouse when she sees the shot put balls. At this point, yes, a lot of bad things have happened, and she feels completely cornered. There's news of a mastermind. There is now not one, but two motives, one of which is a time limit that makes the only options kill or die. But when she makes the decision to attempt murder, things are looking up. She is with Shuichi, and they have a plan, and they are working towards that plan. But then the doubt starts to kick in. Monokuma has succeeded at getting into Kaede's head. Although there is a reasonable alternative to killing at this point, Monokuma, through targeting Kaede's desperation for everyone to live and be friends, has managed to completely break her spirit and convince her that the only way to win is to kill. She has fallen completely under his control, and the moment when she puts that shot put ball in her bag, she has lost him. After being in this killing game, where she is told the only options are to kill or be killed, she believes the only way to beat the game is to kill the mastermind. But she is in fact playing right into Monokuma's hands, and is the one who puts the killing game into motion. This type of character arc I absolutely eat up. Seeing someone who seems genuinely wholesome and good gradually become more and more desperate and manipulated by their circumstances is so disheartening and terrible, but great. And what makes it even better is the duality of her inner monologue. When you don't know what she's planning to do, you just think, she's getting more doubtful and the circumstances are getting to her, without knowing just how much it's getting to her. I cannot praise enough how the inner monologue is written. It's interesting and fits well when you're first playing it, and is even more interesting and telling when you know where it's all going. What's even more heartbreaking though on a second playthrough is Kaede's reaction to Rantaro's dead body. She's shocked at first, the harsh reality of her actions right before her eyes. She is just a high school girl after all. It's all well and good thinking of a plan, but seeing a dead body that you are responsible for must have hit hard. But then she tries to think rationally and brings up that Rantaro was the mastermind, and it will all be over now. But then it gets revealed the mastermind is still alive, Rantaro wasn't innocent, attempting to save everyone much like you and Shuichi were. And you killed him. This is probably where Kaede hits rock bottom. Literally, she collapsed on the floor and everything. She just wanted to protect everyone. She thought she was doing the right thing. And she killed one of the people she was trying to protect. She failed. But in this moment, maybe spurred on by Shuichi's determination and his growth, she realizes her errors and decides that she will do everything in her power to try and get back at the mastermind. I also love the little detail that during this investigation and trial, she never says, "Let's find the killer." She instead always says, "Let's find the mastermind." Unfortunately, despite her best efforts, they can't uncover the mastermind in the trial, so she resorts to simply letting her classmates, mainly Shuichi, prove that she's the killer, and motivating them to work together and find the mastermind in her place. Although she can't actually do anything that directly leads to the mastermind's identity or saving the rest of the cast, she leaves a huge impact through her relationship with Shuichi and the motivation she gives everyone else. Kaede's arc has highs and lows, and I feel like it really came full circle by the end of this chapter. Kaede's character is a huge reason that this chapter is a success for me. I also love the name of the chapter, My Class Trial, Our Class Trial, because it is her class trial. She's the murderer, and at the end she is killed and leaves her gold to the rest of the cast. It's a lovely lead into the rest of the game, and Shuichi's character in particular, but Kaede also stands on her own as a really well developed character, and that is why I love her so much. Right, I imagine that if you've made it this far, you'll probably be thinking, you've been praising this chapter for a good while now, but you've left some glaring holes in your argument. and I do understand that many people who aren't fans of V3 have some serious problems with this case. And if you think this way, that's great! Opinions are lovely, and a series like Danganronpa really encourages different readings and reactions. It is utter insanity after all. But hopefully I've been able to at least shed some light on what I think is good here. So right, let's get to the bits I've left out. Mainly either problems people tend to have with this case, or problems I've found myself. Firstly, the biggie. The first female protagonist of a main Danganronpa game dies in the first chapter and the player character switches to a male character. The game even has the audacity to put female protagonist in the tags for this game. I completely understand why people were annoyed at this. I was annoyed at this. I was so excited to finally have a female protagonist, and when she was such a good character too, it really hurt when they killed her off like that. Then I started thinking that the only purpose of Kaede's character was to propel forward Shuichi's development, similarly to Peko in Fuyuhiko's development or Sayaka in Makoto's. But then I thought about it like this. Just because she was only the protagonist for one chapter, doesn't mean that she isn't a protagonist at all. I would argue that Kaede has much more interesting developments than, say, Makoto, and there is so much more to her arc and effect on Danganronpa as a whole than just getting Shuichi to take off his hat. Kaede is more than the woman in the freezer trope. She is a strong female character, made even stronger and more human through her failings. Her personal journey depended on her decision to kill and in turn be killed, and if it didn't happen this way, she wouldn't be the same character. So while it is kind of annoying, I can forgive it. There's also the other biggie, the fact that Kaede didn't technically kill Rantaro. This could be viewed as an invalidation of the whole first case and Kaede's story, but I just think it adds another layer to the horrendous and unfair worlds the characters are in. Honestly, when I first played it through, I found it a little too convenient that Rantaro was in the perfect position for the ball to hit him. No matter how she set up the camera under the books, she couldn't have known exactly where his head would be at the exact time the ball reached him. There were also a few more elements of her plan that seemed a little messy and I didn't think would actually work. And the fact that it didn't give me all of it, this is so good. Honestly, my favourite part of the last chapter of the game was discovering and proving that Kaede was innocent. It made it all so much more tragic and gave the first case even more importance in the overall game and story. So, now that those interesting debates and topics are done with, the things I dislike in this case seem rather small and petty in comparison. But I still want to complain about them. I'm English. That's what we do. So, Gonta was in the AV room watching a bug movie during the murder, and we spent a hell of a lot of time, both in the investigation and in the trial, going in circles trying to prove he didn't do it, while Gonta just stands there going, "Gonta would never kill, why you don't believe Gonta?" Like, I love Gonta, he's a sweetheart and all, but god was this annoying. Yes, it sets up a foundation for the fourth case, when he actually is the murderer, and keeps saying the same things and is unable to defend himself yet again, but it took up so much time. And it took away from the juicier bits in this trial, like the suspicion switching to Shuichi, and the first experience lying in a trial. Speaking of taking away from juicier bits, I didn't like the inclusion of Monokid's death in Kaede's execution. While I think that the Monokubs are well characterised and fulfill their purpose of giving Monokuma someone to back and forth with, like Monomi in the second game, in general I find them rather annoying, and feel like they only exist to make references that most of the time I don't get, and think they get way too much screen time, especially in the trials. Kaede's execution is so perfect in so many ways. It's such an emotional gut punch, and honestly so heartbreaking. It is also horrific and brutal, and leaves me peeking through my fingers because of how cruel it is. And instead of letting me digest this moment, and let the impact of this crucial plot point settle and have its full impact, here I am getting confused at what the little fucking bears are doing, and then I'm left looking at this asshole's dead fucking face. It pulled me right out of it, to be honest. And I get the formula they're going for of having a Monokub die in each execution, but I don't know. Couldn't they die at any other point? They end up hogging the spotlight during some of the most important moments, and since Danganronpa is well known for its execution sequences, it just didn't sit right with me. Oh, and on a more light-hearted note, why the fuck could I not use this door to the dining room at the start, and then all of a sudden I can, without any sort of informing? Like, it's not blocked or anything. Why can't I use it? Just let me in! I want my fucking breakfast! And there's also the fact that when I was playing the Battle Disarmament minigame, my housemate walked into my room and got very confused and disturbed by the noises. That was a weird one to explain. So that's it for now. I guess it's pretty fucking obvious at this point, but I love this case. It was a really complex and promising start to the third game in the series, and after being disappointed with the Danganronpa 3 anime, this first case blew away all my expectations and made me go, that's the Danganronpa I love. But I also love all the arguments and debates that surround this chapter. The ideas and discussions that can come from this chapter are so interesting to me. Saying this, if you have any agreements, disagreements, or other ideas, please leave a comment. I honestly love seeing as many sides of this game as possible. So, thanks so much for watching. I really like making these videos, so I hope you've enjoyed it as well. If you liked it, check out my other shit. I put a lot of time into these, so it means a lot. Thanks again. See you next time with another V3 case. Goodbye.